Hi, I am Tony Russo, and this is Funeral Service Insider, the podcast. Conversations worth having about death care and end-of-life care. This week, we have a great guest. It is Lanae Stovers. You may know her as one of the trainers from the National Funeral Directors Association. She's a face that we see around. She's also a funeral director at Hamilton's Funeral Home in Des Moines, Iowa. But the reason we are speaking with her today is because of a program that she's been running for a while, that she founded and has been running for a while, called The Final Salute. Now, this is a program where they find, accept, cremated remains that have been found in other funeral homes and arrange to have them all buried or returned to their families. And Lanae does a lot of the research to see what can be done for them. We'll get to hear all about it in just a few moments. But first, a gentle reminder, please stay on till after the credits for some more insight into this fantastic conversation that I'm about to have with Lanae, right after these words from our friends and sponsors at Starmark.
Funeral service is more than a profession. It's a calling. Starmark understands the care, dignity, and efficiency you need to provide for the families you serve. That's why we specialize in sensible product solutions designed to meet your needs. If you're looking for sustainable, economical, and efficient container and casket solutions, Starmark is here to support you. Because presentation means everything, you deserve a partner you can trust. Starmark, the cremation solutions leader. Visit starmarkcp.com today and discover the difference.
So, as I mentioned in our little pre-interview conversation, I'm embarrassed and a little surprised that it took me this long to get on the Final Salute bandwagon. It must have escaped my attention. I don't know how, but I'm glad it no longer has. But for anyone else who is as ignorant as I am, can you start us right from the beginning? Like, who are you? And well, you're Lanae Stovers, but how did you come to funeral service, and then how did you form the Final Salute?
Sure. So let's start with how I became a funeral director, because I think that's a huge part of my journey. So I had no plans on ever entering funeral service. It wasn't on my radar. I don't have anybody in my family that's in funeral service. I was bartending, waiting tables, and I had a regular customer of mine and a very good friend of mine who we had birthdays that were together. We were all getting together for our birthdays, and he never showed up.
Oh, no.
And we found out that his car was found on the side of the road, fully engulfed in flames. And it was devastating, because we knew that it was our friend Jeffrey who had died. But it took 3 months for them to release his remains. And it was just this weird time frame of, what do we do? There wasn't a funeral until he died, until his remains released. Like, it was this weird thing. And then we finally had his funeral, and it was terrible. It wasn't about him, that they didn't, celebrate his life. It just was really bad. And so I did the most logical thing, and I went home and I Googled how to be a funeral director after a couple glasses of wine, and thought this was a good idea.
Fix this.
And I'm going to fix this. And I did. And so I got a email the next day saying, "You've been accepted." And I was like, oh crap, what did I do? And then pretty much just never looked back. So that's how I became a funeral director. I was really wanting to be able to tell people stories the right way. And that kind of led me to Final Salute. 8 years ago, I unfortunately...
I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you for a second, only because people are going to want to ask, where'd you go to mortuary school? And you were an older person then, I guess, at the time. Well, older for mortuary school.
Yeah, I went to DMAC. I live in Iowa, so DMAC's just right up the road for us. I went when DMAC was all in person. So I'm like, ooh, that makes me sound like an old person of like back in my day.
Well, I think I spoke with them earlier this year, because they have like, today it's like mostly not in attendance now.
It's all online now. Yeah. No, yeah, yep. So, and I get the opportunity to work with a lot of DMAC students. They actually do all the clinicals at the funeral home that I work at. So I love being able to see that. So that's fun. But yeah, so it just, as a funeral director working, just doing my thing there. And then unfortunately, I got diagnosed with hip dysplasia. And most people are like, that's what dogs get. You're correct. It's the same thing. And I had to have a surgery that I was going to be on bed rest for 3 months.
Oh,
And most funeral directors are like me and can't sit still for that long. And so I asked the owners of the funeral home for a project that I could do from the hospital bed. And they said, well, we've got about 300 urns sitting in our basement, and maybe you could call them.
that is, it's so. So I've been covering the funeral industry for a little bit more than 3 years now, 3.5 years,
Mhm.
and if you had told me 4 years ago that it was common for for basements to be filled with cremated remains, it would have surprised me. And now when I see like stories in the news, are like, we found an abandoned funeral home and there were 12 I'm like, yeah, of course they were. They were waiting to be picked up.
Yeah. And it's the worst part for me is that I had been with this funeral home at this point for probably more than 5 years. And I didn't know that they
Oh
were there.
wow.
We have 6 locations. They were all in one. So I didn't even know when I was a funeral director there. And so I started calling. I got a lot of the, "Oh, crap. I am so sorry. We totally forgot. I'll be right there." I got a
Mm,
lot of, "My brother was supposed to pick mom up. I am so sorry. I will come get her." A lot of the blame game for sure,
right.
but
Yeah.
we got him back, no judgment. We also had a lot of people that they just said, I know they're there. I am not ready to bring them home, or they're not financially in a spot that they could bury them. And so that was fine too. I just said, I just want to document what we're doing. That's fine.
Mm,
And then there was the group that didn't have anybody, whether the informants that I got a hold of said, I don't want them, or they didn't have any family. Maybe a guardian was the person who signed everything.
right.
Sometimes I had where our informant was also unclaimed, so we had family members that were there together. And so that's where I realized, I just don't feel right about not doing anything, just letting them be down there. And that's kind of where I had that 2 a.m. thought of, hey, we should have a service for these people. And that's kind of where it started. So what we did is we broke the urns up into 3 groups.
I'm
We
sorry. I
had
want to interrupt you for just one more second, only because I wanted to know what your state laws are. Because I know there are some states where it's like after 90 days, you have to get rid of them, or you may not get rid of them for 3 years. Or what are the rules in Iowa?
Yeah, so I have really learned that every state is vastly different because I'm getting a lot of states calling me and asking for help, and I love that. But that's always the first tackle. What are your laws? So
Right.
Iowa's law is that after 60 days, the funeral home can dispose of cremated remains how they see fit, and it must be 90 days for a veteran. Most of these people were years.
Hey, is there a reason for the difference?
So I don't know what the reasoning is. I do see that in a lot of states where there's a little bit more time for the veterans. I think it's because that was written into law so that it would give more time for Department of Veterans Affairs offices
To respond
to
and
to respond. And they've got so much on their plate. So I'm not saying anything,
no,
like,
no, no,
oh,
no.
they
I
need,
know.
but yeah, I think that's the thought process behind that ruling there.
That makes sense. I did a story on getting headstones replaced because I didn't know that was a thing, but you can get headstones replaced. And yeah, but the wait time is just to get the paperwork. It can be significant. It's a small office with a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, and not a lot of help.
Right.
They're like everybody else, short staff, too much work.
What was your pitch to the ownership about what you were doing?
Yeah, so I just went to the owners and I said, "Hey, I got this crazy idea. We should we should hold a service for these individuals." And so we did. The very first one we did was for children. We had 9 children, and it was not public. We just had it at a church, and then I was very lucky to get some cemetery spaces donated to me. And so we just did a very private little burial for those 8 children. And then the next year, we had 86 civilians that we buried in the same cemetery. And we put it out to the public. We had a small group of people that joined us and said prayers and sang Amazing Grace. And then there was the veteran component to it. I do not come from a veteran background. I don't have any veterans in my family, but I just have a very deep respect for their
Right.
service and what they do as a whole. And so we have the incredible Iowa Veterans Cemetery right down the road from us. And so I called the cemetery and I said, "Hey, I got these 3 veterans. I'd really like to do a service for them. Let's invite like some VFWs and Legions and just see if we can get anybody to come." And they're like, "Sounds great. We are on board. Let's do it." And so I vastly underestimated Iowa when planning this. And, I had, we did a little prayer service at the funeral home first. And all of a sudden, like all these people started showing up, like a lot, like 100.
Wow.
Our governor was there. We had a lot of other people that took time out of their day to be there. And so, at that service, I was sitting there thinking like, wow, this is something, but I thought it'd be a one and done thing, like here's my
Right.
3 veterans. And then it was interesting because then the next year I found a few more that weren't like marked veteran on their death certificate because maybe the family didn't know or guardians didn't know, but I started digging in more. And then I had a couple places call me that said, "Hey, there's an urn in the storage unit," or "This urn was found on the side of the road." So then we buried 5 veterans the next year. And then it just kind of every year I'm notorious for saying it. Like, I just don't think we'll do a service the next year. And then it was 11. And then we started, and this was just with the funeral home, but I started having other funeral homes calling me and people were wanting to donate money to this. And so that's when we started separating it and we became the final salute. So we got our 501(c), we got our own bank account, had to hire a lawyer. They make it really hard to do good stuff. Like,
Right. Yeah.
we're working well, but then I was like, I'm just trying to do something good. But so now we have a board and we have grown outside of the funeral home. Now we're having services at a church and we're helping this year. So we just had a service 2 weeks ago and we had 5 different funeral homes that had given us urns. So we're growing. And so to date, we've buried 84 veterans and spouses out at the Veterans Cemetery.
So since these are veterans, they have their own plots and everything. They're identified and put in individual plots, or are they? What does this look like on the ground?
Yeah. So at the cemetery, what we do, and this was in conjunction with what the cemetery requested, is they each get their own niche. So they are buried or placed in the columbarium. So they're all above ground. Now, we did have one veteran that we decided to bury in the ground. And that was because he is a Civil War veteran. And Department of Veterans Affairs helped us get a headstone that was period correct of the headstone he should have gotten when he died in 1929. And he's the only Civil War veteran in that cemetery. And so we felt pretty strongly he should be placed in the ground.
Right. And it's funny that I just mentioned that I'm very familiar with that whole process. There was a veteran cemetery in Walla Walla, Washington, actually, that got a grant to have all of its stones replaced, but they had to verify each of the people and where they go and things like that. And it's always interesting to think that there are people today who will make you a Civil War era headstone for your cemetery.
Yeah.
Join Kates-Boylston at the Sheraton Fort Worth Downtown Hotel in Fort Worth, Texas on December 5th for its upcoming one-day event, Advances in Funeral Innovations. Michael Anderson, president of At Need Marketing, will present the best marketing tactic everyone knows and no one uses. Will Bischoff, Senior VP Strategic Markets for Homesteaders Life Company, will present the Funeral Finance Roadmap, Strategies to Fund What's Next. Tyler Anderson, Senior Vice President Business Development, Precoa, will present What's Next for Pre-Need. These new breakthroughs are leading the way. Nathan Hurst and Tom Cole, National Sales Manager and Vice President of Sales for Federal Eagle, will present benefits from funeral car innovation. Barclay Cadet, Director of Talent Acquisition, Carriage Services, will present the evolution of talent acquisition. Click the link below for more information and to register, and we will see you in Fort Worth. And so since you have expanded into a 501c3, do you buy places in the cemeteries? Like, how do the finances work? What do you put the money toward besides operations, which is a real thing, I know?
We are lucky that a lot of our expenses are donated, but people don't think about all the little stuff that comes to. So you have all these people, they need urns, right? And so luckily, we've teamed up with a high school shop class that has been making them for us the last 2 years, but you still have to buy the wood and the
Right.
varnish and the metal nameplates that go with them. And then we also provide flag cases for each of the flag recipients. We do a lot of research to tell their story. And so there's some costs that go into play that way. We have poster boards that show, we have pictures, giant blown up pictures of each person if we're able to find them. And then you have the poster boards of the stories. And just those this year cost us over $500. And that was with a discount from the person who did it. We buy dog tags for each person. There's the cost to rent the church. While the veterans are free at the cemetery, we have to pay the spouse fee.
Right.
And so there's just lots of little things that all add up. And each service that we do, we guesstimate that it costs us between $6,000 to $10,000 to do it right. We could do it a lot cheaper, but we want to do it the right way. And I think that's why Final Salute has taken off and is getting attention, because we were putting so much work into it and not just saying, oh, here's John Smith, served in the Army from this date to this date, and then put him at the cemetery. It's so much more than that.
And clearly clearly you're funded because people agree, that you should do more.
Yeah. It has been very humbling. I say it a lot. I have imposter syndrome of how did I get to this point where people are calling me and asking for, advice on how to do services for veterans. How can they get it started? I just don't feel like I'm necessarily that person, but I am that person. And so I love that. I embrace it, but it's just kind of a weird feeling for that, because I'm just a funeral director that had a crazy idea at 2 a.m.
You kind of captured my imagination with the posters. So where do the posters go? Or do they stay up in the columbarium or?
So these are giant, huge posters. So we do a visitation time first before the service at a church. And so we have those posters scattered throughout like the atrium.
Wow.
And so they have the picture of the person, and then it tells their story. So we work with a team of genealogists to tell their story. It's very important that we find out as much about these people as we can, because you don't go to a funeral and not hear about the person, right? And that goes back to my friend Jeffrey. They didn't talk about him when he died. And so that has always been a huge part of why this is important to me. And so they tell the stories. And then we also have this year, we were able to have photos of all of the veterans. Sometimes we can't find them, but this year we could. So we actually had a picture behind each one of their urns. So at the church, as you were facing the stage, you could see the photos of each of these individuals. And I think that really brings back the humanization to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes people forget that an urn was a person. And so trying to give them back that dignity of humanity is a huge driving force for us.
When you approach the school, I think that's a brilliant story. I'm sure that they did a nice story locally in it, but I think it's amazing that you have these high school students. They know what they're doing, and they're doing it on purpose. What was that like? How did you arrange that? Were you involved in arranging that, or did the high school reach out to you, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I reached out to the high school. So I knew that our local high school shop class always did a big project for veterans in our community. So they have a list of our veterans, and they would make different things for them throughout the year. So I knew that passion was already there. And so I called the shop class teacher and I said, crazy idea. I know most high school students aren't thinking, let's make an urn today. So every year we have a little video that we get put together. And so he's like, let me talk to the class and we'll vote on it. And so he showed the video, and you got a bunch of high school boys, right? And he's like, I've never heard our room so quiet. you could hear a pin drop of them watching this. And it was unanimous, 100%. This is what we want to do. And then last year at the service, so each veteran has different representatives, a flag bearer, urn bearer, and flag recipient. And so we had a few of the shop class students be that. So they could come to the service and see all of the urns and see the impact of what they were doing to help us. And so then this year, when we needed them again, he's like, we're on board 100%. The kids want to do this.
That's fantastic. And so this, without committing anything for them, but in the foreseeable future, this is just how it's going to go. It grows. You seem to get like permanent partners slowly. Does that?
Yeah. So I told him, I said, I'm going to ask you to do it until you tell me no. So, they're beautiful. You can just really tell it's not something that they just quick slap together. They really, really put a lot of time and effort into it, and they're stunning.
That's absolutely fantastic. So if someone else wanted to do something like this, what are the kind of basic, I'm sorry, this is a tacky question, and I'm only going to ask it but do you do like a franchise thing? Like, can someone say, hey, I want to do this, send me this stuff, or would you rather encourage people to start their own, I guess is the question.
Yeah. So this is, I'm so glad you're asking that. So this year we had a funeral director from Wisconsin who came to the service hoping to start her own. And we have a board, and, I never imagined that other people would be crazy enough to want to take on this project as well. But now we do. And I've had a lot of other states reach out to me. So we are currently working on a blueprint to help other states. And, we're coming up with, we want them to be under final salute. And with that, if you're going to do a service like this, you need to agree to certain things that
Right.
we feel are important. Now, if somebody wants to do it on their own, great, love it. But if you're going to use, what we built, our requirements are that you have to have a funeral director in your group that's helping. You have to tell the story of the veterans and do the research. You have to have the urn bearer, flag recipient. But we're working on a handbook, I guess is the best way to do it, of getting that out to others.
Right.
And we're doing the research and helping to figure out. So like, for example, Wisconsin, like we're figuring out, okay, what's the laws that you have to do in your state? How can we help you set that up? And so we're working on that. So hopefully in 6 months, we'll be in a really good place. If Nebraska or Texas or California calls and says, hey, we want to do a subsect of final salute in our state, what do we need to do? It will be really easy for us to say, hey, here's a guidebook. You do have some creative freedom with it, but this is our standards. And it's not gatekeeping, right? Like,
Right.
it's not the super secret. This is Lanae's thing. It's really a community event. And how can we help you make that as well?
Well, and yeah, and I mean, anyone who listens to this podcast, I guess, could kind of stumble out and give it a shot. And I've done stories before on different, there are different unclaimed remains programs and practices, but this one just seems like you just seem to really have it kind of locked in.
And I think it's because we're not just going out to the cemetery doing the military honors portion. We just do so much more than that. And while it is so much more work, I think that's why we've been successful in the community support, because we care so deeply and we spend so much time finding out their stories. And that's kind of a thing that a lot of people step over. Once they get that discharge paper and they're good to go, that's all they need. And not saying that that's bad. It's just not what we believe in and what our standards are.
Right. And I mean, who knows if you had just all 300, you could have solved all 300 on that first day. You may not have discovered this,
Right.
So being slowed down by the process is also part of helping. But there is that balance of like, how much more am I able to take on? And I guess having a structure would make it easier.
Yeah. And our board, we're a hot mess of people. We always say that after we have a successful, service, we're like, how did we make this happen? Like, but it's also, I run it as a funeral director. I've got 2 genealogists. I've got a gentleman who he used to be the Army Honors funeral team. And so he helps us there. I've got a Patriot Guard guy. I've got 2 people from Department of Veterans Affairs that helps me. And so it really takes everybody to make it happen. But we all work full time, or
Yeah.
2 jobs or 3 jobs, and I'm the trainer with the National Funeral Directors Association. So I'm very busy with that, and I still work at the funeral home. And it's like, how do we make this happen? But we do, right? And it's just about delegating and finding a really good team to support you. And I cannot stress that enough. I know it's hard for funeral directors to give up control. I was there. I had a really hard time, when I was like, okay, I can't do this alone. But that's what makes it really fulfilling, is when you have a lot of people that have the same mission as you.
And can you tell everyone how they can get in touch if they want to get in touch with the Final Salute? What's the best way?
Yeah, so we are pretty active on our Facebook page, and it's just the Final Salute Facebook. You can also Google me, but I also work for NFDA, so I have my NFDA email out there. But yeah, if this is something that you would like to do, get a hold of us. We want to help you and set you up for success in that way.
Excellent. And that is pretty much all I have for you, unless you have something else for me. Is there something I should have asked and didn't, or something you thought you'd get the opportunity to say, but I didn't provide it?
I would say the one thing that we do that has really helped the community take this on as their own is, so every veteran gets an urn bearer, a flag bearer, and a flag recipient. And we choose those people from the community. And that has really started to be a huge place of honor for people to get asked that. So those people have stretched from congressmen, senators to VFW, Patriot Guard. We've had kids that have done it that have been involved. We've had Blue Star moms, Gold Star parents be that. And so that has really helped us form this really awesome community. This year, one of our flag recipients was the first captain of the USS Iowa submarine. He flew in from Arkansas to be that. And so that's really also helped us kind of get the community more involved. And when people get asked that's a huge honor, and they really help us spread that.
That's fantastic. Oh, well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it greatly. And I think we already have the date set for next year. So if anybody wants to have a fun trip to Iowa, because I know we're a destination state, mark October 3rd, 2026 on your calendar.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Funeral service is more than a profession. It's a calling. Starmark understands the care, dignity, and efficiency you need to provide for the families you serve. That's why we specialize in sensible product solutions designed to meet your needs. If you're looking for sustainable, economical, and efficient container and casket solutions, Starmark is here to support you. Because presentation means everything, you deserve a partner you can trust. Starmark, the cremation solutions leader. Visit starmarkcp.com today and discover the difference.
I think one of the reasons that I'm so attracted to these stories about dealing with unclaimed remains, honoring, I guess, is better than dealing with unclaimed remains, is it's because it's like a validation. Like putting your money where your mouth is, that kind of thing. It's a way to show the community how seriously we take this position, even if it is just quote unquote cremation. So I thank Lanae so much for taking the time. It was right coming up to NFDA when we got to speak, and I know that she was really under the gun, so it was cool that she took the time, and I hope you enjoy the show and also maybe the story. The story will be out sometime soon in Funeral Service Insider, the newsletter. Funeral Service Insider, the podcast, is a Kates-Boylston production. It was written and edited by me, Tony Russo. Please subscribe wherever you're listening now. And if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, you can send them to my email address, which you will find in the show notes. And I will catch you next time.